What it do, boos? Trinity Sims here again with my very first, at least my very first published Sims 4 build. I was so excited to do this particular build. It is based off a very haunted location. This is the Lalaurie Mansion. It is a mansion that's actually out in New Orleans, Louisiana. Basically it was a whole lot of torturous things that happened inside of this house, and is now one of the most haunted places that you can possibly visit. People have complained about, being touched, being chased, being strangled. It can get pretty crazy. So I thought, oh well, this would be a pretty interesting, build to go ahead and try to do. So as you can see, I'm trying to go ahead and get it all laid out. Like I said, this home is based in New Orleans, so New Orleans architecture is pretty interesting. They really love to have their courtyards and stuff. It takes on French and a little bit of Spanish influence whenever it comes to several of their homes, especially whenever you can see certain types of detailing on the outside of the homes. They have a real true Spanish feel with like wrought iron gates and everything else. So this was really exciting. I'm actually from Louisiana. I was born and raised there, small little country town out in basically the middle of nowhere. I stayed about 4.5 hours away from New Orleans, and I absolutely loved it whenever we would visit. I remember my first time ever visiting New Orleans, it was during a funeral. So if anyone's ever witnessed the funerals in New Orleans, basically they're pretty much, well, depending on who it is, I'm pretty sure they're pretty much like parades. And I didn't know at the time, no one that I was with really knew what was going on, because like I said, it was our first time ever seeing something like that. And so we was driving in, I remember it was for a church trip. We was driving in, and all of a sudden we saw all these people out in the street. We're like, oh, come on, let's go. We go jump out. Then all of a sudden I turn around and I see a coffin coming my way. So you can imagine the freak out that I had. We went back and got into the car after that and stuff. So that was my first ever experience with the certain different culture that comes along with New Orleans. Getting back to the video real quick, yeah, I'm really struggling on trying to create the opening that creates the courtyard for the Lalaurie Mansion, because they don't really necessarily have, well, some homes do have yards in New Orleans, but more of them more so have courtyards, which are just encasing inside of the home itself. So you have a little small amount of actual grass and outsidedness, I don't know what to call it right now, and that's as much as you can possibly get. So yeah, they would have like little patios outside. They may have a little garden outside. And with this particular build that I ended up doing, I will have to split it up in two parts, because this was my first time doing a build this big. Like typically whenever I do my Sims 4 builds for my own families and homes, they're never really this big. I think the most I've ever done was 2 stories, and there was no way I could actually fill up. This is a 30 by 30 lot. There was no way I could actually fill up a 30 by 30 lot with just home. It would at least be, just a smaller portion of that. Then, I would still have the yard and the front and, other places to try to decorate and expound on. At any rate, back to Lalaurie. While you watch the build going on in the back, yeah, I'm still struggling a bit. I do certainly apologize for that. But Lalaurie, her real name was Delphine Lalaurie. She lived there with her third husband, who was a doctor. And the way that the story goes, while she was living there, they later found out that she was torturing and murdering several of her slaves, because this was back in the 1800s, whenever, slavery was still legal. And so she did crazy things to her slaves, like just psychotic things. There's several reports about the kind of messed up things that she did, and even by those day-to-day standards of the 1800s, it's still made several people just sick to their stomachs. Like, how could you possibly, do something like this? And so she ended up being found out. It was during I wanted to say the first situation happened whenever there were eyewitness accounts that she was chasing this young slave girl. Um, and then they said it was okay. I've heard of two different recollections of this. The first one I heard, she was on the roof and she ran her off the roof and she fell to her death. And another one I heard, she was on the balcony. Either way it go, she chased this girl off of the house into where she ended up, dying from that. And then even still, that's one of the accounts that people hear about is, someone screaming, falling, from the roof, and they can actually hear the body just thud onto the ground, and which is pretty scary. Like, I know I would never want to ever walk, into this home. I did take a trip as an adult to New Orleans, and me and my friend did a one of those haunted ghost tours, and we did end up going to the Lalaurie home, and it was creepy. Like, as the what would you call her, the lady who's giving the tour, the spokesperson or whatever, as she's giving the the spiel about everything that ended up happening, and I'm just looking at this home like, my God, just craziness. So at any rate, the way that she was found out by the public was that she kept one lady chained in the kitchen at all times. And so pretty much what ended up happening, she found the slave lady, and she was an old lady. She was chained up in the kitchen, and then she ended up finding out that, hey, yeah, I'm gonna be taken upstairs, and upstairs is one place that you never want to go, because several people who go upstairs, they never see you again. So instead of going through that, she decided to set the house on fire. She said, I would rather die than be taken in there. So she set the house on fire while Lalaurie was having she was having a party. So all the police and the fire marshals, come there, and they end up talking to the lady in the kitchen, and they come to find out she confessed. She said, yeah, I set the fire. I would rather, go out, in a blaze than be taken upstairs to the room, because like she said, anyone who went up there didn't come back out. So all of the bystanders and everyone else was standing outside, and then they went in to try to get all of the slaves out of the house. And so the police and the fire marshals are asking Lalaurie, like, look, give us the keys so we can go get everybody out, so everybody can come to safety. And she refused to give them the keys. So what ended up happening is that all of the bystanders and all the people who was actually at the party, basically break down the doors. And then whenever they go in, especially to the uppermost area, they find some of the worst conditions that you will ever see. I won't go into detail about exactly what was in there. If you really want to go see, Wikipedia is a great resource to say, because it is very, very, very gory. So pretty much they chased her out of New Orleans. She eventually ended up escaping. There are several myths about what ended up happening to her. Some say that she was hiding out in New Orleans under an assumed name, but it comes to find out that where she pretty much ended up going was, she ended up going to Paris, where she lived until she died, an old woman. And then actually her grave site is in New Orleans. So rumor has it that they brought her body back to New Orleans to have it buried there. So yeah, it's a really dark yet still at the same time kind of intriguing story. They had actually did something based off of her. Like, I don't know if anyone's on here has ever seen American Horror Story, and they kind of did it's not based on any part of history when it comes to Lalaurie in American Horror Story, but in American Horror Story Coven, they did have someone portraying her, Kathy Bates. I love Kathy Bates, and to me she played a pretty good Lalaurie. And then they even tried to expound on her character. Of course, that part of her character never happened in real life, to whenever she tried to have redeeming qualities. No, the real lady was an absolute monster. But yeah, whenever they portrayed her in American Horror Story Coven, they ended up bringing her back from the dead, because the voodoo mistress that was played by, oh my goodness, what is her name? I should hate myself for forgetting her name. It's going to come to me at some point, and then I'm just going to be so upset whenever it does. I am awful with names. Awful, awful, awful with names. But she ended up having a run in with her whenever she was still alive. She was like a voodoo mistress, and not mistress, that just sounded awful. She was a voodoo priestess, or a witch, however you really want to call her. And she pretty much was like, well, you wronged me, because one of her slaves was her lover, her, I think it was her husband or something. And so she ended up wronging her and stuff. So she basically cursed her and stuff, and then she ended up bringing her back from the dead eventually, a little bit later. Angela Bassett, thank God it finally popped into my head. That was killing me. Angela Bassett is the one that plays the voodoo priestess in the show, and she does end up bringing her back from the dead. And then eventually the witches get a hold of her and stuff, and since she is severely racist, which she is, it's kind of obvious how racist she is, she appoints her to be the slave of one of the black girls on the show, who was also a witch slash voodoo-ish kind of thing. She kind of bounced in and out whenever it came to her abilities, but ultimately she was a witch. And then during that time, you did see them two try to form some kind of bond, but in the end, she didn't really change. But it was still interesting to watch, all of that take place. At any rate, that was just based on that was fictionalized. This lady did not have a single redeeming quality to her name. But anyways, that is the story of a general story of Lalaurie herself, and then how she was portrayed in popular culture whenever it did come to American Horror Story Coven, which was one of my favorite seasons of American Horror Story. I do still have to watch some of the other ones, but some of my friends told me, oh, you may not want to watch this season or this season because it was god awful. I heard bad things about Freak Show. I don't know if anyone else out there liked Freak Show or not. I have to watch it myself to actually get a general sense of what happened in Freak Show, but I heard it was awful because the payoff of the clown itself was just disappointing. Anyways, to get back to the bill, because I know I've barely been focused on the bill, just going off on a tangent, and I do apologize about that because I can run my mouth. At any rate, it seems like I always come back to whenever I am struggling. I could not figure out how to get that darn balcony to work right, because there is a balcony on the inside courtyard part of the home, so whenever you can come out, and I'm about to put a staircase in a bit, and I was struggling with the staircase. I had a real ditzy moment. I'm like, oh, why is the staircase up against the wall? Not realizing, you put a balcony there, so you will see me really trying to put it in there, and it didn't dawn on me till later, like, oh yeah, that's why. At any rate, now I'm sitting up here and trying to put the I wanted to have some little cobblestone parts onto it. Like, I did leave some of the grass exposed for the plant life, that I will put in part 2 of the build. And yeah, whenever I was up there toying around with the fences on the second floor, I ended up accidentally putting it on the first floor, and I just completely just jacked everything up down there. So you see me trying to really go through and fix it. Like I said, this is my first time ever doing a build this big, so yeah, I did make a few mishaps here, there, everywhere. So I do apologize about that again, but I was really proud of myself whenever it came to this particular build, because I try to get it as close to the original as possible. And it was fun to build. It really was, to try to get one that is of this grand of a size. And I did try to keep many of the inside doors. Unfortunately, we don't have that many, old-timey doors. I tried to do, what best I could with what we get, with what we did get with it. I wish that, we would have some more older doors. Does that make sense? More, antique doors. I think that's the word I wanted to say. Anyways, we should be heading to screenshots in a bit once I add these few more windows. Like I said, this build was just so much fun. I hope that you enjoyed it. I want everyone to live it up and have a fantabulous and a bootastic day.